Imagine being asked to give up the thing you hold dearest if God asked you to. That's the question that haunts anyone who reads the story of Abraham and Isaac. But here's the twist. There's a shocking detail about this story that almost no one talks about. A secret hidden in the text that may completely change how you see this moment of ultimate faith and obedience. This isn't just a story about sacrifice. It's a story filled with hidden messages, puzzling details, and breathtaking insights that even many theologians overlook. For instance, did you know that the location of this event, Mount Moriah, might hold the key to understanding not just this story, but the entire Bible? Stay with us, because we're about to uncover truths that could change your perspective forever. If you love exploring the mysteries of the Bible and unlocking its timeless lessons, hit that subscribe button right now. This is just the beginning of an incredible journey through one of the most mysterious stories in Scripture. Let's start with one of the most perplexing moments in the Bible: God's command to Abraham. In Genesis 22, God says, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." It's a command that seems to defy everything we know about God's character. Why would a loving God ask for such a horrifying act? But here's where the story takes a deeper turn. The phrase "your only son" carries a profound weight in this context. Isaac wasn't Abraham's only child, he also had Ishmael. Yet God refers to Isaac as Abraham's only son because he was the child of the covenant, the promise that Abraham and Sarah had waited decades for. This wasn't just a test of obedience, it was a test of Abraham's trust in the God who gave him Isaac in the first place. And here's a fascinating fact. In the original Hebrew, the word for love appears for the very first time in the Bible in this passage. It's as if the text is telling us that love itself is being put on trial. Will Abraham's love for God surpass even his love for his son? The journey to Mount Moriah is another layer of this story that's rich with meaning. Abraham travels for 3 days, with Isaac, 2 servants, and a donkey. But why 3 days? Why not 1 or 5? In biblical symbolism, the number 3 often represents completeness or divine perfection. It's as if the journey itself is a reflection of God's plan coming to fruition. Here's something that will blow your mind. Jewish tradition holds that Mount Moriah is the same site where the Temple of Solomon was later built. But did you know that some scholars suggest it might also be the location of Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified? If true, this would mean that Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac was a prophetic foreshadowing of God's ultimate sacrifice of his son for humanity. And let's talk about the journey itself. Imagine the silence, the tension, the questions swirling in Abraham's mind. He knows what God has asked, but Isaac doesn't. And here's where a subtle yet powerful detail emerges. Abraham tells his servants, "We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Did you catch that? He says "we." It's a hint that Abraham believed, even in the face of this impossible test, that God could somehow bring Isaac back from the dead. Now let's focus on Isaac, the so-called victim of this story. Most depictions show him as a young boy, helpless and unaware of what's happening. But did you know that many ancient Jewish texts suggest Isaac was much older, perhaps even in his 30s? This changes everything. If Isaac was a grown man, his willingness to go along with Abraham's plan becomes an extraordinary act of faith in its own right. Picture this. Abraham binds Isaac and lays him on the altar. Isaac doesn't fight back. Why? Because Isaac trusted his father, just as Abraham trusted God. This is one of the most overlooked aspects of the story. It's not just a test of Abraham's faith, it's a test of Isaac's faith as well. Isaac becomes a symbol of submission and trust, qualities that point forward to Jesus' own willing sacrifice centuries later. And here's a fascinating detail that many people miss. The wood for the burnt offering is placed on Isaac's back as they ascend the mountain. Sound familiar? It's a striking parallel to Jesus carrying his cross to Calvary. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a deliberate foreshadowing woven into the fabric of Scripture. Just as Abraham is about to plunge the knife into Isaac, the angel of the Lord calls out, "Do not lay a hand on the boy." In that moment, Abraham looks up and sees a ram caught in a thicket. The ram becomes the substitute for Isaac, and Abraham offers it as a sacrifice instead. But here's where things get truly mind-blowing. The Hebrew word for thicket used in this passage can also mean interwoven or entangled. This isn't just a random detail, it's a profound metaphor for how God's plan is intricately woven into the fabric of history. The ram didn't just happen to be there. It was placed there by divine design, just as Jesus was sent at the appointed time to be the ultimate sacrifice. And here's a fact that will make you rethink this story. Some ancient Jewish traditions suggest that the horns of the ram were later used to make the first shofar, the trumpet used in Jewish worship. If true, this would mean that the ram's sacrifice continued to echo through history as a symbol of God's provision and faithfulness. After the ram is sacrificed, God reaffirms his covenant with Abraham. He promises that Abraham's descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. This isn't just a reward for Abraham's obedience, it's a confirmation that God's promises are unbreakable. But there's an even deeper lesson here. The story of Isaac's near sacrifice isn't just about Abraham's faith, it's about God's character. God never intended for Isaac to die. This test wasn't about taking something from Abraham, it was about giving something to him. A deeper understanding of God's provision and faithfulness. And here's the ultimate takeaway. The story of Abraham and Isaac points forward to the ultimate act of love. Just as Abraham was willing to sacrifice his only son, God did sacrifice his only son for us. But unlike Isaac, there was no ram to take Jesus' place. He became the lamb, the perfect sacrifice for the sins of the world. So what can we learn from this story? The sacrifice of Isaac isn't just a story about obedience. It's a story about trust, faith, and God's unshakable love. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, God's provision is already waiting for us. We just need to trust Him. And remember that unique detail about the ram's horns and the thicket. It's a powerful symbol of how God's plan is always at work, even when we can't see it. This story isn't just history, it's a message of hope for you and me today. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video if you found it insightful. Together, we'll continue exploring the incredible truths of the Bible, one story at a time. See you in the next video.